In this video, I'm going to show you how you can take one simple concept and create an NCAA football model, as well as potentially an NCAA basketball model. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. My name is MGCovers. We're going to dive into this video. Before we do that, don't forget to follow me on Instagram. I give out a ton of content there as well. I have something called Free Fridays, give out all my lines for all sports on Fridays, as well as during the day and even at night. I post a ton of content on my stories. So if you want to learn, get better at sports handicapping, you can follow me for free. Doesn't cost anything, and you get a ton of value for that. Link to follow me is in the description of this video. Let's dive into this because I'm super excited. Now, what you see on this screen, these are the teams in the playoff. So to basically explain this, the concept is you need to rank teams and give them a letter grade of A, B, C, or D based on their strength of schedule, and not only their strength of schedule, but who they beat and or who they lost to. So this is how I rank this. Now, there's several resources that you use. If you're a client, I actually show you the resource that I use. But for now, I can explain this to where you can understand it. So look right here, Arizona State. I gave Arizona State a B. So they are a B team. Tennessee is an A team. Boise State is a C. Majority of teams here, Texas, Oregon, Notre Dame, Penn State, quote, A teams. Indiana is a B team. Georgia, an A team. SMU, B team. Clemson and Ohio State are both A teams. Now, I want to briefly look at Indiana's schedule since I gave them a B grade, okay? If you look over here on the left, you'll see they played Florida International, Western Illinois, UCLA, Charlotte, Maryland, Northwestern, Nebraska. These are not ranked teams, Michigan State, Michigan. And look what happens when they stepped up in class and played a, quote, A team, basically got blown out by Ohio State. So for that reason, I graded them as a B team. Now, if you go back to this model here, what that means is if Indiana is playing any of these A teams, the A team will be favored over the B team. And you can see here, I gave Boise State the only C team. If an A team was playing a C team, obviously the A team would be favored more than they would be playing a B team. Now, you could potentially just use this as a model. For example, you would have to come up with a, quote, arbitrary number, but realistic. You could do some testing, meaning if an A team played a B team, that line might be -7, -8. If an A team is playing a C team, that line might be maybe -17, maybe even a 3-touchdown -21. You could also account for home court advantage. Teams that win in college football win at home 70% of the time. So you could shade the line to the home side. If they were an A team, for example, if the A team was home, that line might be -21. If they were on the road, that line might be -13, for example. So that's the first part of this. Now, the second part, what I did was I used actual stats. So if you look here, I used my actual stats, or a combination of stats for my college football model, and combined that with the, quote, letter grade. So for example, if I just used stats, Arizona State would have been the best team, followed by Tennessee, Boise State, Texas, Oregon, Notre Dame, etc. However, how I did this was I took all of the A teams and I ranked all of the A teams from top to bottom. So you can see here, Tennessee was the second best team using, quote, stats, but they would go ahead of Arizona State because they're an A team, as well as Texas, Oregon, Notre Dame, Penn State, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State. So even though Arizona State is the, quote, top team statistically, they would rank below all of the, quote, A teams. Why? Because they are a, quote, B team. So hopefully that makes sense. So Arizona State was the highest ranked B team, so they fall in the 9th slot. You can see here Indiana was the next best B team, so they are 10th. SMU is here 18th, and then finally Boise State, even though they're the third best team statistically, I graded them as a, quote, C team, so they are the 12th best team. So that's how I did it. Now, let me show you another example. So I already showed you Indiana's schedule. I want to show you South Carolina, my team. Take a look at their schedule. Whoops, that's not showing. My bad. Okay, here we go. Look at, so South Carolina played a very difficult schedule. They lost to LSU. They lost to Ole Miss. Almost beat Alabama, but they did have wins over Texas A&M, Missouri, and Clemson, who is a playoff team. So even though South Carolina is 9-3, if South Carolina was playing Indiana, because I have South Carolina as an A team, I would have them favored over Indiana, if that makes sense. Now, so the next question is, well, I think I answered that. So if both teams have the same grade, then I use the stat model. If they're a different class, then if they're the same class, then I use the stat model. If they're different class, then I just basically default to what I talked about earlier. So let's look at some examples. Let me show you. And while you're looking at this, you'll actually have access to this. If you click the link in the description, I'll have all these lines so you can see them. So for example, Georgia Southern and Sam Houston. Whoops, I don't have that page up, my bad. Okay, Georgia Southern and Sam Houston. Georgia Southern is a C team. I have Sam Houston as a D team. Now, if I was just using stats, Sam Houston would be minus 9.5. But because Sam Houston is a D team and Georgia Southern I have as a C team, I have Georgia Southern favored minus 7. And another good one to look at is Tulane and Florida. I don't use any stats for this one because Tulane I have as a B team and I have Florida as an A team, even though they are 7-5 quote record. And you could come up, again, I'm just sort of creating some arbitrary numbers. If an A team is playing a B team, that's going to vary. That's going to be anywhere from 7 to 10 points. An A to C team is going to be closer to 21. And if you look up just ahead of that, Western Kentucky, I have them as a D team playing James Madison, a B team. So from B to D, that needs to be a bigger gap. So I have James Madison as minus 21. Now, you could, if you want to keep this very simple, you could just use just this classification without any stats. But I think your model, if you can find a stat, like I always talk about, that correlates to winning, you could use that as well to make this model even sharper. Now, I will say this, for those of you, I probably will not wager on this model. I think it's very difficult to wager and handicap college football during bowl season. A lot of players have declared for the draft. For example, Illinois playing South Carolina bowl game. Bryant, their number one receiver, best player on the team, is declared for the draft. He's not going to play in a bowl game. That's happened with a lot. A lot of these guys have entered the portal, so you really don't know what you're going to get. So I probably will avoid the majority of these, but I want you to understand the concept of how I'm creating this. So hope that helps. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you're interested in being a client, there's a link in the description. You can sign up, very cheap, $50 a month, gives you access to all my lines for all sports. You also get access to all my coaching videos as well. If you join for the year, that's the best value. Pay $500 one time. You get access to everything on the site for 1 year. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.